Well, good evening, everyone. Oh, wow, I'm sorry. Remember, this is Red Ribbon Week. We kept our stuff on. So, good evening, everybody. Yes. Oh, very nice. I so appreciate that. Well, so with that, good evening. And welcome to our first Student Safety Night of this school year, but it's the fourth one since we started this 2 school years ago. And so, of course, you know me. I'm Dr. Nichols, and the head of school here at Alpha Christian. And please bow with me as we pray, and then we're going to dive in. Father, we love you, and we so appreciate how you love us. Father, help us appreciate that more all the time. And Father, we know from your word how much you love our kids and the responsibility, the accountability that comes with the gift of our kids to us from you. Father, tonight as we have an opportunity to discuss very seriously things that have to do with our kids and about us and how we do this raising of our kids together in a day and age that we're in. Father, give us great wisdom and insight. Move in our hearts and in our minds. Help us, Father, to hear from your Spirit. Help us to know the truth. Help us to be able to be committed constantly, again and again, to our kids, regardless of circumstances and regardless of challenges and regardless of the things that the world would say. That, Father, we might please you and that the end result would be our kids discovering their finest future that you have designed for them. Father, may we be found faithful. May tonight be part of being found faithful as we have a chance together to commune with each other and with you for the sake of our kids. Thank you for how you're going to do this as we place this night and our kids afresh into your hands. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Well, as we begin tonight, I want to give us a very brief, foundation upon which to talk about and discuss crucial truths about our kids, as well as talk about and discuss crucial truths with our kids. In Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 4 to 9, it says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, with all your mind. These commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Write them on the door frames of your houses and on your gates." And the first point I want to make is that our children should be hearing truth all the time. This is immediately after Moses comes down off the mountain. He has the tablets, he has the 10 Commandments literally written in stone by God. And God immediately then says, now, this is how you deal with truth. You start with your children. You teach it to them. And it's not just an hour a day. It's not just 4 hours a day. In fact, it's not even at school 8 hours a day. It's all the time. All the time that they're awake, they need to hear truth. And not from that perspective, it doesn't carry that connotation of like when you ram something down somebody's throat. That's not the connotation, that's not the context of it. It's more of this, as you're doing this as a family, you're sharing these things every moment. And so the first point for us, and just tonight as we put this foundation together, is our children should be hearing truth all the time. And in the world that we're in, that's a harder and harder proposition, I would submit to you. The second thing is that our children should not be hindered from hearing the truth or coming to the truth. And Jesus was really clear about this. Matthew 19 says, "Then people brought little children to Jesus for him to place his hands on them and pray for them. But the disciples rebuked them. Jesus said, 'Let the little children come to me and do not hinder them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these.' When he had placed his hands on them, he went on from there." Mark 10, 13, 16 has just a little nuance difference. It says, people were bringing little children to Jesus for him to place his hands on them. But the disciples rebuked them. When Jesus saw this, he was indignant. That's the point I wanted to add, this particular passage. He was upset to the point where, and if depending on how you want to look at what the Greek says, like with anger, like, no, don't keep them from coming to me. And he said to them, let the little children come to me, and do not hinder them, for the kingdom of God belongs to such as these. Truly I tell you, anyone who will not receive the kingdom of God like a little child will never enter it. And he took the children in his arms, placed his hands on them, and blessed them. And then Matthew 10 has this one verse, Matthew 18, verse 10, says, see that you do not despise one of these little ones. For I tell you that their angels in heaven always see the face of my Father in heaven. So there is this special connection with kids that God is constantly talking about in these passages. So our children should not be hindered from coming to the truth, and that should both either by commission or omission. We don't want to put any barriers to them coming to a knowledge of the truth and the things that they need to be able to hear. In Luke 17, chapter 17, verse 1 through 3, God warns against anyone causing children to sin. Luke 17:1 says, Jesus said to his disciples, things that cause people to stumble are bound to come, but woe to anyone through whom they come. It would be better for them to be thrown into the sea with a millstone tied around their neck than to cause one of these little ones to stumble. So watch yourselves. And the reality, sadly, today, is that there are those who are trying to cause our children to sin, that are trying to capture them in whatever they can, and not just vaping with different flavors, but all kinds of incredibly sad, hurtful, dangerous kinds of things. More so than we've seen, certainly in my lifetime, and I'm sure I'm the oldest one in here, but even in your lifetimes, things have changed rapidly, and they're continuing to change rapidly. And that leads to my last point as we go into tonight, which is our children must learn and love the truth so much that they can stand firm in their beliefs and be influential even in this new digital Babylon. And so the story I want to bring up just very briefly is when Israel was carried off into exile, into Babylon. The Babylonians had, since they were conquering many different nations, they had a process that worked really well. They would go into the land and they would identify the best and the brightest within the culture that they were conquering. They would get particularly young males. Females were for, obviously, sadly, other reasons. But they would get certain males that were of high pedigree, that were very bright, and they would kidnap those, take those young men, typically teenagers, and take them back to the capital city in order for them to be groomed for use in service, if they were the best that they had. So as the story goes, there were these 4 teenagers that we know as Daniel and Shadrach and Meshach and Abednego. They had other Hebrew names, so Daniel was still there before they went into exile. But the thing about these teenage boys was that their faith was remarkably strong, even in exile, even in Babylon. Just think about being taken as a teenager out of your home country to a completely foreign and pagan culture, and then taught how you're going to work in the palace and work within the government of the place that has taken you into captivity. And what's fascinating is as you go through those first 3 chapters of the book of Daniel, these guys, they all stood their ground. They did what they were taught to do when it came to all of the responsibilities, and they were really good at what they did. And they did it with great integrity. But then, when they were challenged at the core of their belief, and this is Shadrach and Meshach and Abednego, when they were even challenged with death unless they bowed, they wouldn't do it. They said, our God is fully able to save us, but even, and here's the proof in the pudding, but even if he doesn't save us, we still won't bow down, because they knew who the real king was. So, and because of that, not only did God save them, but they were used to have great influence, even in Babylonia, even in that pagan culture, and even had influence on the king, because they stood their ground. Now, someone had to teach them those things before they were carried off into exile. They didn't learn how to stand in their faith. They didn't learn about their faith. They didn't learn to acquire their faith in Babylon. This had to happen way before they were carried off, before they had no choice. Someone had these very important, foundational, deep discussions with them that they had taken to heart, and that they had placed their faith and their hope and their own decision-making in before they were taken away. We don't often think about that, but it had to happen before they left, before they were taken. Now, our kids, all our kids, and we're in here too, but now especially focusing on our children, whatever their age is, live in a new kind of Babylon. What is being called by those that are looking at these times as digital Babylon. And if they're going to resist temptations, if our kids are going to stand firm in the truth, then we as parents and adults need to have discussions and take actions to guide their way and equip them to be what Kinnaman and Matlock in their new book, Faith for Exiles, calls resilient exiles. That no matter what the culture looks like, that they can stand firm in what they believe and still be respected by those who don't believe it, because they are so committed to what it is that they know is true. And so that's kind of the launching point, the springboard tonight for the discussions we're going to have.
So obviously today's a little bit different, right? Like I'm in purple hair. That's a little crazy. Dr. Nichols, well, you just got to like look at the socks and the shoes and like really just like crazy sock, crazy hair, crazy hot sock, crazy hair day. Miss Wynn has like 47 ponytails. Clearly, we don't look like we would normally look for presenting something like this. But this is Red Ribbon Week, right? So we all know what Red Ribbon Week is. And why did they make it so hard to say? Was no one ever supposed to deliver this message about this? Look at our campus. Have you guys been on campus and been able to see this? This is amazing. Be the reason someone smiles today. You will never regret being kind. You guys can't see it, but the little squares are Post-it notes in the middle school building where kids are encouraged to leave a note, take a note, just write a note, just share some kindness with one another. We are doing so well at expressing and sharing this idea of anti-drug message, right? Do we agree? Yep. Yeah. So nationwide, we're pretty much bought into this program, which is pretty awesome. We want to make sure that we are doing that very thing, making kindness loud. And so it's funny that this night we do at least this first one during this Red Ribbon Week. And that's a whole conversation about keeping our kids safe, keeping our kids informed, keeping our parents informed, and starting to have conversations and dialogue about potentially uncomfortable situations, right? Or no, it's totally comfortable at home? Like everybody's just like, hey, how do you feel about smoking crack? No, we have to work at it, right? We have to have different special occasions that makes this a little bit more intentional. I was talking with a couple of parents earlier this week about why do we even do these nights? What's the point? And we feel like the point is to get us in community, to have a conversation and to be in dialogue about the things that are affecting our children, that are affecting our future, that are affecting our own households, and then the world at large, humanity. It's hard when we think about that because we become so siloed in our own little households. The safe way, the way to keep our child safe, is just to keep them locked in our own home. I have a teenager. I think that's a perfect response. No, she shouldn't ever get a driver's license. She's really sad that she's here today. So she shouldn't ever get a driver's license. She shouldn't ever do anything that makes me uncomfortable. I should never leave my comfort zone. I should just be able to do life comfortably and give her information and make her be able to grow up and be fine, right? But during our time together, I want you to know that we are going to deal with some stuff that is uncomfortable. How many of you are here for the very first time? Yay! Welcome. I don't normally wear red hair, or I do wear my normal color hair, purple hair, to these kind of events. We normally take it pretty seriously and dress accordingly. But we feel like it is important, and the reason that we provide food for your children and that they have extra daycare and that we don't have them in here is so that we can have grown-up dialogue. We can have conversations that are uncomfortable, but that we think are necessary. We feel like it is something that we've been called to do, to partner with you. We say that in all of the welcome to our school stuff, and this is one of the ways where we try to truly live that out. Okay? Every year we come up with great ideas, we think. I want to give this opportunity for you to tell us if there is anything that you feel like we should be talking about, that we have missed the mark on. Please tell us. Even if we haven't missed the mark, we just don't even know about it. Let us know. We don't want this to truly be just us talking at you. We do want to provide you with information. We do spend our days and nights focused on these kinds of things, but we want your input, okay? So we've had some input from parents. We've talked about some few things. If this is your first time, and it is for many, welcome. We have done this 3 other times before. In those 3 prior parent or student safety nights, we have talked about bullying, what it is and what it isn't. We've talked about social pressures facing our Gen Z, that's your kiddos, what that actually looks like for them. We've talked a little bit about internet safety. We've talked about digital citizenship. We've talked about social media. We've talked about youth suicide, the epidemic that has become. We've talked about state-mandated and proposed sexual education training and stuff that made us all incredibly uncomfortable. But we talked about what our public school systems are forced to talk about. If you didn't hear any of those conversations, you want to. You don't really want to, but you want to, you need to. We've talked about campus safety, how we deal with it on our campus here. We've talked about depression, anxiety, and self-harm. We will not talk about all of those things tonight, but you can pick them up on our website. You can look at our YouTube channel, and you will be able to see each one of those 3 prior safety nights for yourself, okay? If you have any questions at all, please do not hesitate to make a phone call, schedule some time with Mrs. Nguyen, with Dr. Nichols, or with myself. We would love to have those conversations with you. I love nothing more than when a parent comes in and says, hey, you know what you talked about? And I have a parent in the room that did this just this year. Last year you talked about this. It didn't really pertain to me last year, but right now I'm thinking it, so could we sit down and talk? That's one of my favorite things to do. So please don't feel like it is burdening us in any way. So take a look, take a listen to those things. If we bore you, ask us for the Reader's Digest version. We totally got it. You will notice that we handed out a handout this time. If you flip to the back, you're going to notice this funky little thing that says Notes and Handouts, or Notes and Thoughts. So we're expecting you to participate. Up till now, we've been talking heads, giving you information. Now we're going to try to extract some back or get you guys to work together as a community to come up with ideas. Sound good? No, not good? Yeah. Okay. We are a changing culture, and so with that, we have to change. So even though we have talked about internet safety in the past, we've talked about technology in the past. We're going to talk a little bit more about it today in a little bit more depth. Technology is not Satan, believe it or not. I believe Satan is actually my trainer at 5 a.m. His name is Eric. I tell him he is Satan, and he says, you won't think that when you fit in the dress you want to. That's still up for debate. Okay? But God has given us technology. He's given us the gift of learning more, craving more, creating more. With that comes technology. We have cured diseases and ailments because we have technology. Technology is not Satan, okay? But with all of those gifts comes responsibilities. In my 8th grade class, we're just starting through Genesis, and this amazing story of this beautiful awesomeness that God created for us in this beautiful Eden that is so beyond anything we could ever imagine and hope for. And 2 chapters later, we're going to talk about what mankind did with that. Yeah. So if it was tough for them, what does 2019 look like for our children? Yeah. We're a long, long, long ways away from a simple tree, right? So we have to do something consciously different than we've ever done before. We have to be conscientious. We have to be radically different, just like Jesus was. Do we agree? Yeah, radically different. We talked about this in my class today. Miss Royse said, radically, we're so excited. And the kids are like, uh-huh. No, radical is like so different. Dramatically different. Not just, it's a different shade of pink, radically different. So that takes conscious effort on our part as parents. That's hard. Hard, okay? When I think of somebody who is truly conscientious, who thinks before they speak, who doesn't do anything without effort and thought, I think of our very own Coach Royse. Anybody had a conversation with that dude? Serious, conscientious. So I asked him to share with us tonight a little bit, just from his heart, about what some of that could look like as it connects to our technology. He is our webmaster, our IT director, our everything that plugs in kind of guy. If it plugs in and it has a problem, we call him. I called one day for my hairdryer. He didn't care. I don't know.
I've had enough struggles with my own hairdryer on a daily basis. I don't need anyone else's. Yeah, I had several students try to mess with me today and say, "Coach, where's the crazy hair?" And I said, "Yeah, you think you're being crazy, but you weren't crazy enough to shave it off for the sake of this day, like I did." So, anyway, does anyone in here remember a childhood where your parents didn't care about locking the doors or windows all the time? Yeah. Okay, at least half of you. Good. Me too. So the house that I grew up in, my parents' house that they still have, really unique house. There's a sliding door in every room of the house, except for one guest bathroom. Every room has a sliding door. Yeah, it's the perfect getaway for the teen adolescent late night. So I've heard, easy escape. But summer nights, growing up, all of our sliding doors are open all night. My mom is from India. She grew up in India. And in her neighborhood, same thing, except hers was the next step. Like, I don't know why there were even locks installed in any homes over there, because no one ever locked their doors or windows. They could leave for a week, their home is wide open. Wow. Same Philippines, I'm guessing? Yeah, similar. And even as kids, when we would go to India to visit, same thing. They just leave their doors and windows open all the time. That's the world that my parents grew up in. That's even the world that I grew up in. Does anyone do that today? Not one. Me either. Anyone have the Nextdoor app? Anyone use the Nextdoor app? Okay, yeah. So you probably live in fear, because you're just constantly getting notifications of suspicious activity and break-ins and stolen packages. And here's what I saw on my camera today. This is not the world we live in. We lock our doors today, and it's so different than when we grew up, because the world has changed to an extent where we feel less secure in our own homes, to where we feel like we always have to lock our doors. And we do, rightfully so, because there does seem to be growing dangers for ourselves and our families. And so I'm not a parent, I don't have kids, but I can only assume that for those of you who do, and all of you do, that when it comes to your kids, the first priority above everything else is safety. You begin and end each day with the goal of protecting your kids, of training them up, of helping them to become everything that they want to be. But first and foremost, you want to make sure that they are safe at all times. But hopefully, we also realize that it is impossible for us to protect our kids physically, literally, from every danger in this world. And that's why we spend so much time, you as parents, we as teachers and leaders during the day, to train them to protect themselves, because we won't always be there. And so we share our wisdom and our experience and our own knowledge of what we know to be best for them. We take every step possible today to prepare them so that they can protect themselves tomorrow. Does that make sense? But that doesn't mean that we don't protect them today, which is why we still lock our doors at home. So we teach our kids what to do if a stranger approaches them. We teach them how to handle that situation. But we don't leave our homes open for any stranger to just walk in and do as they please, thinking, oh, well, we've trained our kids what to do. We still take every measure to protect them, even though at the same time we are trying to prepare them to protect themselves. I'm not here to talk about physical safety, despite the last 5 minutes, but my primary concern tonight and today is the emotional and the mental safety and the health of our kids. Because in my opinion, physical safety is really the easiest part of safety to manage. Like, it's the easiest part of safety to preserve and to sustain. And when our kids are in physical danger, it's usually pretty easy to see. Like, hey kid, you might want to take a step back off that ledge. Like, when our kids are in physical danger, it's usually pretty clear. When I was a kid, I grew up in a very loving, nurturing, stable home. And so I always felt safe. My parents did a great job of making sure that I was always safe, and they taught me how to prepare, and they prepared me to protect myself and keep myself safe physically. But what they were ignorant of were the things that endangered my mental and emotional health. And if you know anything about adolescence and puberty and the disease that it is, it's a disease as far as my experience has been with it. It is a disease. But if you are familiar, or if you can think back to yourself as a teen, when your mental and emotional health are challenged, your sense of identity is also challenged. And when your sense of identity is challenged, the whole world is a big question mark that you have no idea how to navigate. And so for my parents, the biggest threats to my innocence, two things: rap music and cable TV. I don't know if there's anyone else in the room who had similar parents, but as far as my parents were concerned, for a long time, cable TV was like the devil. Like rock music was the devil to their parents, even though eventually they caved in and got us cable. But they knew that there was an explicit world out there. And in their defense, when I was a kid, like if you wanted to explore something that you are not allowed to explore, you had to actively search for it. But this is not the world we live in today. Today, Every threat that endangers our children's physical, mental, and emotional health is immediately accessible, and we don't have to go looking for it at all, and they don't have to look for it. The first time I saw pornography was 5th grade, so I was either 10 or 11. That was in 1993. It was not easy to find in 1993. But a friend of mine who was in 6th grade, he showed me how to find the scrambled Playboy channel on the cable box. Remember we had to turn the TV to channel 3 to watch the cable box? Yeah, back in that day. To my parents had no idea of this kind of exposure that was available in their own home. For them, if I wanted exposure to that, I would have to go to the liquor store around the corner from my house, sneak a magazine off the adult rack, and duck behind the corner shelf in the back and flip through the pages as fast as I could before someone caught me. That's what I had to do as far as my parents were concerned. And then when the internet came into our home at a blazing speed of 56K, my parents had no idea what it brought with it. And I can say this confidently because the next computer that they bought, they let me keep in my room. Do not do that. Side note. Because what ensued from there was over a decade of struggle with porn that drastically affected my emotional and mental well-being. And my point of this is not really the pornography in itself. I could talk about the effects that it had on me, but my point is not really that. It's just the easiest illustration that I can give with my personal experience and the fact that pornography is one of those things today, and it's everywhere. My point is, up to a certain time in history, we had to actively look for poison. But today, poison is actively searching for us, and specifically for our kids. There are executives within that industry who have admitted on record that their goal is to expose every child by the age of 12, because if they get them by the age of 12, they know they have a lifelong customer. Hopefully that makes you sick to your stomach, because it makes me sick to my stomach. But this is the reality that we live in. So my point is that if we are not actively locking the necessary doors for our children's safety, and today these doors are the devices. That is the door to the world, for us and for our kids. And if we are not actively locking those doors, we are inviting strangers into their lives. But there's one exception. If you were to literally allow a stranger into your home, there's a 50-50 chance that that stranger will be either harmful or helpful. Like if a stranger walked up with a puppy in his hand, saying, "Hey, I'm just trying to find a home for this pit bull, for this puppy pit bull," there's a 50-50 chance. Either your family is going to be blessed with the best dog on earth, personal opinion, sorry, or he's just waiting to bash the door and to rob you for everything that you have. 50-50 chance. But when we let the entire world into our kids' devices, which is what the internet is, when we allow an entire world of strangers into our digital lives, that helpful or harmful ratio, probability, becomes a lot more bleak and a lot more dangerous. So I'm here to stress, once again, the importance of having a hand in your children's technology and to be proactive in ensuring that you are protecting them by protecting their devices. And there's numerous ways that we should be doing this. One is limiting their screen time, because how much time they spend looking at a screen actually is affecting them emotionally and physiologically in the brain. never before has there been so much available brain research done, and that is continually being done. It's a quick Google search that will send you through a rabbit hole in terms of what effects our screen time has on us, and especially our kids who as teens are just beginning to develop their brains. It's really frustrating when a kid walks into my class Monday morning after they've had the entire weekend, just dead, and I'm like, yo, why didn't you get any rest? Fortnite, coach. I'm like, you had the whole weekend to rest, which you should be doing. I'm not against gaming, I'm just saying screen time is a thing and it's a serious thing. Cutting off late night internet access. Shout out to Solid Ground's former pastor, Bob Beatty, who used to always say, nothing good happens after 11 p.m. I laughed the first time I heard that in church, and then I thought about it. Well, you're right. Nothing good happens after 11 p.m. I know the idea of monitoring your kids' social media, if they have them, seems intrusive or over the top for some parents, and I get it. But let me try to relate your experience with today's reality. So when I was in high school, if I had a girlfriend, and that girlfriend came over to the house to hang out, and we wanted to hang out in my room, there was one rule. Only one rule that I had. You probably know what it is. Leave the door open. Simple rule. That rule took care of the rest of the rules. I didn't need another rule after that rule. Leave the door open. Today, this is the equivalent. Because especially as our kids become teenagers, their relationships, whether they're friendships or intimate relationships, play out as much online through their devices as it does physically in person. I mean, I think in my own adult life, the relationships that I've had, as time goes on, more and more of them are technology reliant. Like our communication as adults is more technology reliant. And we're adults who know better. Think about our kids who are born into this. This is how they are growing up, and this is how they live out their relationships. So if leaving the door open is not an extreme rule to you, then monitoring their social media and what they're doing online should be no more abnormal. If you've been following us this year, then you've heard us promote content filtering, specifically Securely, because that's the provider that we use at school and on our middle school iPads, and they take their iPads home every day, all year long, and so it's our responsibility as a school to take every measure that we can to make sure that they are safe and that we are practicing what we are preaching to you. And so I was trying to set up a way to do a live demo because I have a Securely device at home. I was in the mountains all week last week with middle school. It didn't happen. I spent all week sleeping away the insanity that I got all week with middle school, so I didn't have time. But what I did do was provide you with a couple screenshots because, again, I set this up in my home just to test. And so, and in your handouts, you'll see in the inside some more information, and I'll go over that in a little bit. But what Securely is it's cloud-based, so there is a device, but never mind, I'll spare you the geek talk. So the image on the left is the Securely Home app. All of these screenshots are from an app. It's a free app, Securely Home. And once you set this up, what you have first is on the left. And so you'll see the pause. So when this device is plugged into your network at home, it's a simple box. You can hit that pause button anytime. It just cuts off the internet, like a lot of routers do that your cable providers provide you with at home now. This does the same thing. There are rules, and that's on the right, and all the rules are simple on and off switches. So you can enable Google Safe Search. So anytime you do a search, a Google search, Safe Search is used, which is built in by Google and Bing and all the other search engines. Same thing with image search and safe YouTube restrictions. Then you can block categories or allow categories like gaming, social media. And so the rules themselves are really easy to implement. You can also type in your own websites that you want to specifically block or allow. The coolest thing, and this is the newest thing, is the profiles. So you can set up different profiles for different kids in your house. So if you have a teenager and you have an 8-year-old, you can set up different profiles with different rules for what each of those children are allowed to or not allowed to access. And then what you do is for every profile you see on the right, you can assign devices that are on your network to those children. So what I did is I created Mike Jordan, a very close friend of mine, and I assigned him my phone that I was testing out. So I assigned my phone to his device. So all the rules that I set for his profile are now enforced on my phone. And I can add multiple devices for any profile. So on the left, you'll see the activity feed, and this is all of the activity that you will see from any devices that you have being monitored on your app. Now, as soon as a device connects to your Wi-Fi network, you'll get a notification from the app that says, hey, this, Justin's iPad just connected to your network. Do you want to filter this device? And you can select yes or no. And so if you select yes, then it will now be monitored and logged on your activity feed. And you'll see what is allowed and blocked. I have social media blocked for those profiles, and so you see Twitter blocked, and you'll see all those Google searches. It says Safe Search, so that tells you that it's being filtered, that those search results are being filtered. So on the right is what I saw when I tried to access a porn site. That's the message I saw. So if you've seen that before, maybe you have, at the bottom there's an option that you can tap on that says Advanced, and usually that has an option that says Proceed Anyway. And so I tried that, but it just took me right back here. So every porn site that I tried 3 or 4, this is the exact message or screenshot that I got as a result. That's what it looks like. So in your handout, since we partner with Securely, now you can on your own go to securely.com and /hub, which is I think is on your handout as well, and you can go through that whole process on your own. Since we are partners, we can benefit if you choose the Securely Hub, which is that little box I showed at back to school night. And so all you do first is provide your email address with me. You give your email address to me. I put it into our school account so that when you follow the rest of those directions on that to download the Securely Home app and then purchase the hub and use that same email address that you gave me, it will automatically recognize your email address as being linked to our school. And so we just get $10 for any hub that's purchased through any of our families like that. One thing that's different since the beginning of the school year is that Securely Hub was a monthly subscription fee. So you get the hub for free, but you pay $5.99, $6 a month. Now the offer is you can buy the hub outright for $60 with no fee. So you use it as long as you want. I personally prefer that because I hate monthly bills because it just makes me feel like I'm more in debt. So I like that option to just buy it flat out. So that's the offer that you have to use, and you'll see that when you just go to securely.com/hub. There's a lot of different options for content filtering. Obviously, Securely is one of many. For personal home use, there's a lot of free options. I've used several free options as well that also work. OpenDNS being one of them. It takes a little more configuration, a little more effort in configuration on the back end. So if you're comfortable doing that, logging into your router and going that way, then that's a viable option as well. Securely is one option that's built on simplicity, efficiency and simplicity. And most of the things that we have to pay for today, if we think about it, we pay for them because they're just really simple and we don't have to think about it. And this is one of them. So, but there are a lot of different options that you have for locking that door on your children's devices. And so if you have any other questions, you can find me anytime. Shoot me an email. If you see me on campus, I'm roaming around all the time. Feel free to stop me. I actually had an issue this weekend, and so I had to put a ticket in with Securely Support, and that was on Sunday afternoon. Monday morning, they had already gotten back to me, and we've been going back and forth. I mean, every response I give them, they've answered back to me in within an hour. And that's me registered as a personal user, not with the school. So their support has been excellent so far, both from the school side and the personal side that I've seen. But there are many different ways that you can protect your kids and lock those doors that you need to lock. Last thing I'll leave you with is this. I've stressed the need, obviously, to protect our kids digitally by monitoring their devices, locking them down, being proactive, because I feel like these are truly critical in the world that we live in today, which is just an always connected world. But even more important, I think, than how you lock your doors is what is happening behind those doors, within your own walls. And the most valuable thing that you can do as parents is have conversations with your kids. My dad had a lot of meaningful conversations with me throughout my life. And even if at the time, he probably felt like he was wasting his time because I was so often like non-responsive, but those conversations stuck with me. And when I look back, like there were times that I can remember where those conversations echoed in my mind. Ongoing conversations about sex, premarital sex, teen pregnancy, drug use, all these things that we expect to be able to talk about and should talk about. They had an impact even if I didn't realize it then, and even if he didn't realize it then, they had an impact and they still have an impact today. But one conversation that was not ongoing and never even started was the one that I needed to have, that I never had. And I'm not placing blame on anyone for my decisions about myself, because my decisions were my decisions, just like they will always be my decisions. And anytime you try to have a serious conversation with your kid, especially as they get into their teen years, you may very well feel like you're wasting your time, because they will not open up to you. They'll be cold, just like I was, and they won't allow themselves to be vulnerable. But I can remember certain times when I was really struggling with my struggle, like the struggle was real, and I came to a place where I was tired of myself. I was tired of failing, because I knew, like I grew up in the church, I knew Jesus, and I knew what was right, and I knew everything in my head. And I just kept failing. And every so often you just get to a point where you're just tired of failing, and you just feel like a failure every single day. And those times, subconsciously, I knew that I needed to have a conversation with someone who I trusted and who I knew was on my side, who would have been my dad. And even to the point where I wanted to have it just so I could free myself, so that someone could ask me, so I could finally just vomit it all out. Because, you get to that point. But there was no way I was going to initiate it as a teenager. There was absolutely no way. If you are one of those parents who has a kid who initiates those conversations, you are extra blessed, because most of our kids are not that kid, especially in the teenage years. I knew what I needed, but as an adolescent, I needed to be pulled into it. And again, I know I'm not a parent. You are the parents, but as a teacher, when I see my students struggling, not just academically, but personally, in confidence or whatever, it's my responsibility and it's our responsibility as the adults who know what is best for them when they don't, to acknowledge when they are at their end and they need to be pulled in. And it is our responsibility to take that step and to reach out and to pull them in. And so if there's one thing I want to leave you with more than anything, more than the protection, which is vital, it's the preparation. It's the protection and the preparation. It's the protection actively by locking our doors, but it's the preparation by initiating and continuing loving, supportive conversations that will stick with them even when you forget, or even when you don't think that they have, and even when they don't think that they have, and they still do. Thank you.
Good.
So he may not actually have children that he's biologically connected to, but every single year we get, praises Jesus, every single year we get to see how Coach parents our children. And if you have a child that's in middle school or has been in middle school, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So we appreciate your heart, and God has called you to parent even without them 24/7, which is kind of a cool deal. Because you can probably get them to do laundry or, like, I don't know. Yeah, no. Staying in conversation with kids is really hard. We all know that. We're busy. We've got a lot going on. Coach, we want to just say thank you so much for sharing your testimony. Like, if you have this is the image that I think of. Like, if your parents were to be in your head, kind of at the time, and they weren't because you weren't having the conversation with them, and no disrespect. I love Coach's parents. Like, we're close. Love them. But I think that as a parent, oftentimes our kids say and do and experience things that we're just completely unaware of. And I think that if we had a visual for what that looked like, this might be it. You know, the kid's like, ah, and mom's like, I'm trying, I don't know what to do. But thanks for creating a platform for a conversation that is clearly difficult for us as parents, for a child who is seeking that. One of the studies showing, it was very interesting, as Coach and I were talking about our different research and the things that we've done over the times that we've had these kinds of conversations, this week in particular, Securely is a great device. We found it incredibly difficult to do a whole lot of research on pornography here on campus. We shared a couple text messages and we're like, yeah, I'm just going home and I'm going to figure this out. Which is great. It let us know. Securely is a great device. It has a great reporting system. We can show kids what we're seeing that they're searching. It's pretty phenomenal. But one of the things that all of our research shows, and I've shared this with you before, but I thought it bears sharing again, is that the average age in which children begin to view pornography is 11. So for our mathematicians in the room, if it's an average of 11, what's the low end? Okay? Yeah, 8, 9. Which means our digital natives are exposed at every turn. They see this everywhere we go. Today's culture, we actually teach our kids. We push them. We want them to grow more, ask more, create more. This is good. But when we do it without some oversight, we're pushing our culture to continually create a system where, as humans, we just are pushing the limits. You all have heard your parents say something about, I would have never done that. You would never do what your child has done. Any of the moms in the room heard their own mom come out of their mouth and be mortified? I disowned my mom. How did that happen? Right? Yeah. So our culture is changing. We are an evolving culture. It happens over time, and it's little baby steps. It's nothing huge. We didn't decide one day we're going to be super conservative, and one day open the floodgates. It doesn't matter. That didn't happen that way. It happened slowly. So Coach was talking about the worst thing his parents had to deal with was rap music and cable TV. So I thought that was a little bit heavy, I thought we'd play a little bit of trivia. Anybody like trivia?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some of TV's most controversial firsts. You guys are thinking, right? Okay, so you ready? You got it? All right. Which TV show had the first birth? Who knows how to do the Jeopardy thing? What do you think, Mr. Kozit? I Love Lucy. You're right. Woo! We have no prizes, sorry. We're a private school. Yay! So the birth of Lucy and Ricky's first child was in January of 1953. Okay, the entire country was hooked. It had almost 72% of homes with a television set. Isn't it interesting that we had to identify that? In 1953, those with a television set were watching. They turned in, which was substantially more than those who tuned in to watch Dwight Eisenhower's inauguration the next day. So in 1953, we cared more about Lucy giving birth than we did about our president's inauguration. Okay? Even though I Love Lucy was the first birth, it wasn't totally free from controversy. In the series, no one ever referred to Lucy as being pregnant. She was expecting. Yeah. And let's not even talk about the fact that they had twin beds. Nope. We're not doing that. It's 1953 after all. All right, how about the first major death on TV? Major death, not a news feed death. I had this conversation when I was trying to get Miss Wynn to play trivia with me. I'm like, no, not that. TV show. First death. Anybody? Mr. Kozit, you were solid. No? You're tapping out? Phone a friend? I wouldn't have gotten this one either. Make Room for Daddy had rebranded itself into the Danny Thomas Show. The key actress, Jean Hagen, had left the show because she was unsatisfied with her character, but they didn't know what to do with her because they were married, and you can't get divorced because divorce is taboo in the 50s, so they killed her. So that was way better. Let's kill her. I'm not judging divorce. That's none of that. I'm talking about TV first, so nobody go, we're not preaching heresy here, okay? But it was easier than dealing with the taboo of the time to just snuff her off, right? Peace. So the producer said, this is the safest route we've got. Okay. How about the first toilet? What? Yeah. Any of us with little kids are like, is this really a thing? Anybody have an idea? Goes it? All in the Family? No, that would have been good. I bet there were a lot of firsts that came out of that one. But we're going to just stick with Leave It to Beaver. They were so cautious in the 1950s because, they're dealing with the pregnancy issues. They're dealing with the whole death issue. And now somebody wrote in this thing that Leave It to Beaver was supposed to have a pet alligator and hide it in the toilet tank. And how are you going to hide the alligator in the toilet tank if you don't show the toilet? But let's face it, none of us use the toilet. So what will we do? Right? So it was a problem. Ultimately, both the producers and the executives agreed that they could show the tank because it was critical to the storyline. But let's not address anything else. All right? All right. How about the first scripted curse word? Oof. Now, Coach and I have a differing opinion. Our research is a little bit different, but I think we agree in the timeline-ish, and so we're just going to go with this one. So people had accidentally cursed on TV and live television. They dealt with the FCC differently, right? Like, oops, kind of like radio. Oops, didn't mean it, right? But in 1999, Mark Harmon uttered some words. You can read them. My daughter and I had this conversation. I'm not going to say them because I'm at school. But in an episode of Chicago Hope, Mark Harmon uttered these words. Oh, St. Elsewhere. So he thought it was NYPD Blue.
That's way up. Sorry.
This is old and bad.
St. Elsewhere.
Okay, so I have bad intel. The internet is horrible. Okay, cool. I admit it. Was it in the same years? In the 70s?
Oh yeah, St. Elsewhere. was in late 70s or maybe early 80s, because Chicago Hope has only been around about 3 to 4 years. It ain't Miss Hall.
What? Really? We'd give you a prize if we had one.
We need to go buy a prize.
We need to go buy a prize. He's really young. All right, anyway, whenever it was that we decided it was okay to script curse words, it was a surprise. And today our children have to search out the clean version of the song that they want to hear. They have to search the clean version. It's not the one readily available. They have to search it out. So we've kind of come a long way. What about the first belly button to make its way to TV? Not on a baby.
I think actually it was like Jimmy.
Ooh, you would think, huh? That's a good one. Anybody else have a guess about I Dream of Jeannie? I Dream of Jeannie. What else happened around that same time? I got you, babe. Cher, 1975, showed her belly button on national TV as a key performer. Previously, network executives had forbade Barbara Eden from exposing her belly button. She had to pull that thing up just a tiny bit. Shorts on both Ginger and Marianne and Gilligan's Island also had to be made a little bit differently. We should not share our belly button at all. So I have to wonder, what did those conversations at home look like for the boys and the girls in 1975 when Cher shows up like this? Who I still think looks exactly like that. I don't know. Modern science. Just as we've normalized all of these things. So we would look at TV show today, and do we care if we see a toilet? Does it make any difference at all to us? Completely irrelevant. Does it matter if we talk about pregnancy or children being born? No, we actually embrace it. We're like, yay, let's give the good story. Let's have a good, happy family, right? So as we've progressed in society and in culture, we have changed what's acceptable. We have normalized things so much so that what our kids see every day is so surprising. So if you imagine what your parents thought or grandparents thought about Cher showing her belly button, it's a little bit like what we feel about Kendall Jenner. That's a little bit more than a belly button. And that's on national newsstands, in your local grocery store, in front of your 5-year-old. Every grocery store in America posted this in 2017 because she made headlines. She's an influencer. Her body is not covered. She's a little bit more than Cher's belly button. So when we're thinking that our children are not exposed to things we don't want them exposed to, look at your grocery store line. You're not looking at the things that are entertaining your children. It's also why they put candy there. How many times have you said, no, we're not getting that. No, we're not getting that. Put that down. No, fine. Just put it in the cart and get up here. Just please, can we get out of the grocery store? Jaden doesn't eat candy, so that's super helpful. That's not the place that gets us. But going back to the idea that we need to have conversation. When your child sees this, when they're looking at these images, what conversation are you having? Or are you having any at all? As parents, we want to pretend what we see doesn't exist so that we don't have to do it. Because I don't want to. I don't want to talk to my 15-year-old daughter about pornography. I don't. But if I don't, someone else will. Who's going to be that person? Now, these are age-appropriate conversations, of course. You don't want to have the same conversation that I would have with my 15-year-old with your 6-year-old. That's not what we're promoting. Our conversation starter is, what are we doing to address the things our children see and hear from an intentional place? Coach talked about it. How prepared are we? How prepared are we? I talk to parents all the time. Parents tell me, I don't want to have this conversation because I don't want to introduce the sin to the child. And I'm here to tell you, you are not introducing the sin. The world has already done it. It's already there. What are you going to do about it? That's the question. How have you prepared yourself to have an honest, truthful conversation with your child? We go take our kids to get their shots. Do we tell them, this won't hurt, honey, you're going to be perfectly fine? No. Right? You're going to be like, it's going to kind of hurt. Sorry. I'll buy you a candy, I'll buy you an ice cream, buy you anything you want. Can we just get through the shot? How many of you made a deal with their kid about shots? Come on. Anderson, how many deals you made with your kid about getting a shot? Yeah, right? I know it's going to hurt, right? It's not going to be fun. Mrs. Cosett, like what? What's the deal? How much, what do we give them? Bribe, right? Because the other option is we have to lie to them. It won't hurt. It hurts. Now they don't trust us. Well, that's not a good place to be. If they don't trust you, they won't talk to you. If you don't start developing trust in real things early on, their trust will be in their friends or in the media. So if we've created a system of distrust. When I was 8 years old, I had suffered from horrible tonsillitis for years and years and years and years. All of them. All 8. Years and years and years and years and years. This is me now at 53. It was years. It was my whole life. I had had these horrible sore throats. And so my parents, going back with the doctor says that I'm going to have surgery and they're going to take my tonsils out. That's what they did back then. And everything's going to be better. So what my parents told me about this great surgery was when I woke up, I was going to be happy and I was going to be healthy and I could eat all the ice cream I wanted and I was going to feel great and I was never going to have the sore throats again. Anybody ever woke up from surgery?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Do you feel, that's the end game. But I'm 8. I was verbal then too. Surprise. I woke up. What? Doctors, nurses, everyone's going crazy because I'm going to rupture these sutures that are now in my throat and I'm whatever. So, didn't take me long to figure out that actually speaking hurt. And these people around me pretty much sucked. And they lied. So I'm not talking ever again. Now, I checked my facts with my dad today. And I said, right, I didn't talk for a month? And he's like, uh-huh. No. It was probably a little closer to a day or so. And then I was better. But one of the things I had to do to get out of the hospital was speak. And so they bribed me with flowers and different kinds of things to speak and get out of the hospital. And he also said that I've never shut up since, so I don't know what that was about. But he said it, so I'll honor it, whatever. But that's what happens with our kids. That moment I woke up, the person I distrusted the most was my parents. Because I believed everything they said. It's important for us to create conversations with kids that are truthful, that are meaningful, and that are age appropriate. So that when you're having these difficult kinds of conversations, you have a platform that makes sense. If they don't ask you, they will ask someone else, I promise. In fact, their bend will be, if we don't change it, to ask someone else first. If we don't intentionally and consciously create a platform for us to be their first response, we will not be. Sit with that for a second. We won't be, because society has told them that there are better options. I want you to think about a question that you have, that the last time your child has asked you a question about something that was important to them that you did not want to address. Whether it be timing, content. Maybe you thought it wasn't important, it wasn't age appropriate, they weren't ready for it. Can you think of one of those questions? I'm just going to have you quickly, we do this in class, so that's why you guys all had to get closer together. Miss Lloyd, if you could come a little closer. She snuck in the back, and I have to call her out. Just in little groups, like kind of where you are, 4, 5, 6 people. What were those kinds of questions? How did you address them? How prepared were you? What did you do? What was that like? My kid asked me a question, I don't want to answer it. No, you're too young. No, I don't want to talk about that. The other thing about my kids learn in my class, I'm really patient. I'll wait for you guys. What were some of the responses that you had for your kids when you didn't want to discuss something? All right, can I show that?
Yeah.
So comes home from school and asks, what is a condom? Mom says, let's not talk about it.
We did. We took a great class at church that was called Embracing the Awkward, so we were prepared. We had read a book. So I needed to collect my thoughts and let my husband know, but we got through it. So we were fairly prepared, but I wasn't expecting it that soon.
Okay, and asking, what is a condom? Yeah, 5th grade. I'm fairly confident this isn't a conversation that's had around home. I'm fairly confident, so for wherever she gets it, and she goes to a private Christian school, and I'm fairly confident that our teachers are not having this conversation, 100%. If they are, we got a big problem. Anyway, but what you had done was prepared. You had taken a class, you had prepared, you had had some pre-thought about how are you going to answer awkward and difficult conversations, right? Yeah. 5th grade, what is a condom? When I was in 5th grade, furthest thing from my mind, I would have never even had a concept that this was a question at all. And so they dealt with it, and I'm assuming you answered it honestly. And
yeah, we had already kind of had the sex conversation with her, so we just kind of used that as the platform, and then kind of talked about the premarital sex, and that's not right. But if people do that, there's ways to protect yourself, and this is how they would do that.
Okay, so planning ahead as a family, you had taken a look at what are some difficult conversations, what does sex look like, what does premarital sex look like, what are some safety measures that you take, and how will we actually answer this question? I think it's brilliant to have some idea in advance. I would rather have pre-thought some of these questions than be blindsided. I love what she said, that the first thing that they did was they stopped and said, I'm going to need a minute. Right? There is no harm in that. You know what? That's a great question. I remember a question. I'm not going to share the whole details just because it doesn't matter to anybody. Jaden asked me something one time, and I literally had that shocked and panicked face and said, that's a great question. Let's talk about that when I get home. And I prayed my drive all the way home for my answer. Right? And we've all had that moment. But if you consciously make a decision that we're going to prepare ourselves to have answers for things we never thought we would answer 5 years before we ever thought we would address it. You will be prepared. Your child will trust you. Your child will have honest, biblical, strong, convicting, safe answers. I love my kids' friends, but I don't trust them to answer those questions for her.
Right.
I just don't. One of the common things that we hear from parents all the time, if it isn't that I don't want to introduce sin, is that we'll discuss this when you're older. Let me tell you something. If they're asking, they're older. If they're asking, they want to know. If they ask you a question in passing, and I don't care how old you are. I asked my mom a question when I was in my 20s. I said, what if, blah, 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 and she haphazardly said, here's the answer, blah, 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 and it had some major consequences for both of us. Because we took it so lightly. Because we don't stop and take time. I was 23 years old, that was 30 years ago. And it had lasting impact to this day. Okay? Learning to train the mind requires that we train our own. Education is not the learning of facts, but the training of our mind to think. Okay, that's what we're doing. As educators, we have to think about each lesson that we're going to teach. And the first thing every educator wants to know when they're about to teach a new lesson is what is the prior knowledge? Where is my platform? Right? Does that make sense? If I'm going to teach math and I'm going to try to teach multiplication, I need to know some stuff. What do I need to know? If I'm going to teach math, what do I need to know first? Can they add? What's their foundation? What are the steps? What are the things they already need to know? If your child is asking you about sex, what do you need to know? Go ahead and get back in your groups and answer that question. Your child is asking you, I want to know about sex. What do you need to know? Problem solve that. Okay. I'm going to honor our time and get us out of here at the 8:00, which means we have 6 minutes left. What are some questions or what are some things that you guys thought about that you need to know first to answer this question?
God's design for.
Great. So one thing that as a family you need to have determined is God's design for intimacy. I love that. What is one thing you need to know about your child asking the question? What do they already know? Yeah, great one. What do they know? How can you answer any question if we're logically, critically thinking through? We have to know, where are we starting? What do they already know? Yeah, what else? What do you want to know? Absolutely, good one. What do you want to know, child? What specifically? Because boy, oh boy, we're grown-ups. We got lots of information. Whew, I want to stop just short of the eyes glazing over and freaking them out, right? Like, I don't know, there's probably some philosopher that says that's exactly the stopping point. When they start to look dazed, you stop. But yeah, we've come a long way. Our kids are not just at that glazed over dazed look. They need more information. What do you already know? What do you want to know? What else? One more, we can't go on. We have 4 minutes. No pressure.
I think where you feel what you know, because if you want to teach them either the proper scientific aspects or the biblical, you have to know that. You have to know where you start, where you're.
Oh, I love that. So that's not even about the kid anymore. That's like, oh my heck, do I know what I think?
Do I know what I'm talking about?
Do I know what I think? I love that. Thank you. That wasn't even my notes. That's perfect. It's better than my notes. Knowing what you believe. Knowing how you want to answer that. Which totally segues me to the place of where are you as a family prepared to answer these kinds of questions without shutting them down. And we're picking pornography and sex because it's easy. It's everywhere. We all agree on this topic. We agree the world is over-sexing our kids. We agree about that. There are every topic in the world that we could be having this conversation. The goal here is to give you some tools to rethink how we answer questions for our kids. How do we prompt children when they see something? You've been in a restaurant. You've seen somebody dressed a certain way. You have an opinion. Are you having that conversation with your children, or are we just trying to shove them under the table and hope they didn't notice? Or are you saying, how did that make you feel? What's going on? What do you think their life is about? How can we pray for them? Right? We get hung up and we get stopped because we're trying to figure out the right Christian answer. And God called us to relationship. Like, sit in that. That's that relationship. That's hard. That means we get in the nitty-gritty of our families. We ask the difficult questions. Our goal and our challenge for you is pretty simple. It is to just challenge you to think about those important things. What are the hot key items in your family? What are the things you're most concerned your kid's going to come home and ask about? Every mom in this room has 5 things Anderson has 42. Mary probably 50. Things that are worrying them right now that their child will ask. They are. They do. I know. I talk to them every day. It makes me so happy. But here's my challenge. How have you critically thought out how you would answer them if they asked? If they did it? If they actually ventured out and trusted you, what would you say? So I found this pretty cool teaching thing on critical thinking for literacy. And as I read through it and I shared it with some of my colleagues, we looked at it and said, yep, those would be good questions for every single life situation, except for who is the author, and in which case I would say, let's add the Bible and let's ask what God would ask in that situation when you get down to that, into that question. But really our challenge to you guys tonight is look at these questions, look at your heart, have a conversation with your children, lock the doors to your home, lock the doors to their devices. Be their parent, not their best friend. Somebody asked Jaden one time, isn't your mom your best friend? And she said, no. She said she doesn't want to be. I don't. I love that child with my whole heart. 100%. I would give my life right this second for that child. But my job is not to be your best friend. My job is to be the person that says that door stays open if you have a boy in the house. But let me just be honest. The boy's in the living room. Because I'm that mom, okay? And I'm sorry for her. But that's truly the case, right? Be that parent. You are called to raise this child. Deuteronomy tells us, train them up. This is your job. This is not anybody else's, right? Our job is to partner with you, and we hope that we can continue to do that. We thank you guys for being here with us, for trusting us with your children on the daily. We love them so much. So much we love your kids. We love them enough to get up and have these kinds of conversations with y'all, right? It's my birthday, and I'm spending it with you guys talking about pornography and your children. That's how much I love them. No, the thing is just that we are in this together. We are the village. God called us. It takes a village to raise these kiddos. We are privileged to be there. If there is anything that myself, Mrs. Wynn, Dr. Nichols, Pastor Mike can do for you, please don't hesitate to call on us for this or anything else that comes up. And again, if you have any questions or ideas for what we can do in the future, we would love to hear that. Okay? So with that, I'm going to have Pastor Mike pray us out, since I'm pretty sure y'all are sick of hearing me from me. We love Pastor Mike.
Please open your Bibles to Leviticus chapter 1. Thank you so much. Thank you. That was very helpful. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, you bringing to mind specifically the words that you spoke to your children when they were in exile in Babylon. We thank you that you promised them that you had a plan for them, a plan for their good, a plan not to harm them. And we thank you that you are the same God today, that even though we're far away from your culture and it feels like your kingdom hasn't broken in yet, may we trust you. May you fill us with your Spirit in such a way that we can train our children to go out into Babylon, but we have the wisdom to keep Babylon out of them. And that can only happen by your Spirit and you empowering us. So we surrender to you once again, and we dedicate our children to you once again. In the mighty and strong name of Jesus Christ. Amen. God bless you.